Hi, Dad. Thanks
Hi.
again for joining me this evening. So, we're going to have a special session talking about your vehicles, your cars, your other vehicles that you've owned over the course of your life, given that, we
Okay.
began about that a little bit recently. So, I thought it would be worth targeting and having a session devoted to that.
Sure.
So,
There are that many, but most of them have been here in Canada. Anyway,
so
my
what would you say
first,
your first? Like I had asked you if you'd had a tricycle, and you said no, you never owned a tricycle,
I don't recall ever owning a tricycle.
but you had a
That was,
bicycle.
tricycles were for sissies, man.
I mean, when you're just in preschool. But let me ask you this. How old were you when you learned how to ride a bicycle?
Oh, that would have been, oh, gosh, learn a bicycle. It would have been somewhere before my late, somewhere before 10.
Okay.
Before age 10, we could ride because we used to get our father's bicycle when he wasn't around and learn to ride. So, but
So did
my
your father
first,
use a bicycle a lot?
yes, he never owned a car.
Oh, he never owned a car. I didn't realize
Never
that.
owned a car. And as an inspector of police, he was once promoted to become an area inspector, and it meant he had to get a car, and he would have to learn to drive. But he made an appointment with the commissioner or the deputy commissioner and told him that he couldn't afford the expense of a car at this time, in as much as he would get an allowance. Not only that, he was going to be transferred, so he wouldn't be at home with us in the evenings. He would be transferred as an area inspector, and he asked that it be canceled because he
Mm,
had children in high school, and it was important that he be home in the evenings. And he couldn't really afford the expense of a car and that sort of thing. But it was mostly about not being able to come home in the evenings.
right, right.
You see, as before the rank of inspector, he came home every other night. He would spend some nights in the police station and some night. But once he became an inspector, inspectors were able to come home every day.
It's,
So
he was an inspector at that point,
yes, he was a inspector of police.
and they wanted to promote him to area inspector, which is a
No,
higher.
yes, he could have been promoted to area inspector, but he asked that it wasn't going to be a promotion as such, but it just means that he would be transferred
Mm,
and he would have to get a car
okay. So it was
as
more
an
of a
area
ladder,
inspector.
more of a
So
ladder.
he asked and he got out of that one. In the meantime, once he became an inspector, he did not ride a bicycle anymore. As a sergeant and all that, he used to ride a bicycle, or as a sergeant major. But I got his bicycle, or I got a bicycle. My father was able to get us used, bicycles that were, the police got these bicycles, they're illegal because when we were growing up, a bicycle had to be licensed like a car. So a lot of the times they would get people riding without a license and they would seize the bicycles. So the bicycles would end up at the police station and they would be recycled for resale.
Oh, they do that here
Yeah. And
with stolen
at the
bicycles.
time, you had bicycle mechanics who would take a bicycle and pretty much repaint it and do all that sort of thing and resell it. So he would get the bicycles for us done that way. So going to high school, I had a bicycle and Hector had his old bicycle. So my first vehicle was a bicycle. Okay, and then once I started working, I purchased a bicycle that was a top-class bicycle. It was manufactured by Raleigh, was a well-known manufacturer of bicycles, a British manufacturer.
I had a rally.
Raleigh.
Yeah, I had a rally. You bought me a rally.
Oh,
When
okay. So that's
I,
where I knew it. Yeah. So I had one that I bought. I bought it secondhand, but it was as good as new. I can't
so let me
remember. I paid.
about
Yeah.
bicycles in Jamaica at the time. When you were in high school in
Yes.
Jamaica, that would have been the 1950s, yes?
High school. Yes. I started high school in 1948, and I
Okay,
finished in 1952.
okay. So at the time, were bicycles sort of a very sought after, highly desirable object, or were they?
Yes. 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 Most people, most of us didn't own cars.
Okay.
Usually, the people who owned cars were the better off people, or if your job called for a car, or if you owned a taxi business. Most of the time when we were growing up, my father and mother used taxi. And we had a owner of a taxi lived on the same road with us. So we would have a deal with him, you know. Anytime we needed a taxi to go to the railway station or anything like that, we would call him and he would arrange, you know, pick you up at the time and things like that.
Got you.
Yes,
So
but talking,
were you concerned about getting your bicycle stolen when you were riding it to school every day?
I was concerned, but to the extent that we always had locks. You had a lock that would lock a bicycle, and sometimes they were built onto the bicycle. You just switch it in through the wheels. So I've never had a bicycle stolen. But I had a bicycle even while I was working. And then I graduated from a bicycle to a motorcycle,
And how old were you when you bought your first motorcycle? Was it the only motorcycle you ever owned?
the only one. Only one. I bought it from a gentleman who was then in charge of the office I worked in. And I still speak to him. I spoke to him recently and told him about, and he said, oh, yes, he's 92 years old. And he lives in Jamaica.
Did you ever leave Jamaica?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's one of my good contacts from those days. I have to tell you about that. That's a different story, actually. Might have told you already. But anyway, I worked with him, and he owned a BSA 250 motorcycle. And his brother also owned a BSA 250 motorcycle. And his brother graduated to a car. He got his brother's motorcycle, and I bought his motorcycle.
Okay, okay.
And yes, I had that
Do you remember,
motorcycle. Huh?
do you remember what you paid?
30 pounds, I think.
30 pounds.
Yeah,
And
30
how much
pounds.
were you, what was your salary? What were you making each week?
I was making at that time about £6 a week.
6 pounds a week.
Yes, actually, it's quite possible at the time I was making in between. I started at £4.10, and when I left, I was making £6.
Okay.
So the equivalent of £6. It might have been more than that because we got paid monthly after a while. Once you became you started as a temporary clerk, and once you became a permanent clerk, your pay was monthly. just
Okay.
the same as my father used to get his pay monthly.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
that would have been about 5 weeks' pay. So that's reasonable. That would have been a reasonable price.
Yes, yes. I wasn't a big time saver at the time. I don't remember how I came up with the 30 pounds, but I know I found it somehow. And I had that motorcycle. I think I had one accident with it. Not, I didn't have the accident, but a friend of mine borrowed it and had the accident, and I got it fixed up. I got it fixed. That was near to when I was ready to leave. But
So
then,
did you buy like what was it the whole motorcycle culture at the time? Like did you buy like a black motorcycle leather jacket? Were you doing the whole James
no,
Dean?
no, 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 no gear. That
No
happened when
gear.
I went to England. I bought a motorcycle and I got the suit with it. Because,
So you did buy a second motorcycle.
yes, in England, in
Okay.
North Wales.
It's the only motorcycle you bought, but
No, that motorcycle, I sold it to my brother David.
okay.
As a matter of fact, you know what? Yeah, I owned a car for a short time
In Jamaica?
in Jamaica. It was a Vauxhall. I owned the car, and even before I had a driver's license.
Oh, you bought a car before you had a driver's license?
Yes, it was going. The car, that's what I paid for the car. I paid 30 pounds for that car. It was a Vauxhall, and
I'm familiar with Vauxhalls.
yeah, it was British made. I don't think they're around anymore. But that didn't last very long. That was before the motorcycle, actually. It was bicycle, the Vauxhall car, which I didn't have very long because it had a lot of mechanical problems. And in the
Mm.
end, it just was junked.
Okay.
But, I was able to get my driver's license after a while. And I can remember driving my mom to the market in it.
Okay.
And then I remember driving my father once to catch a bus.
So were you the
And he would
first one?
say, you see, if you're a good behaving fellow, we could buy your car, but because you're so still immature and wild, we wouldn't do that. It was the same thing I got about wanting to go to Howard University. But anyway,
But you bought yourself a car.
that was how I was at the time. And not only that, the truth of the matter is, Jackie, I bought the car in partnership with another fellow. So we
Oh, okay.
each put up half the money, but I had the car most of the time. He didn't get to use it too often.
Why not?
I don't know. It's just because I was available, and I mean, I remember him. He didn't have a driver's license.
Oh, so he couldn't drive it
Yes,
anyway.
but I remember his brother who had a driver's license would come and borrow it from time to time. But I had the car most of the time. And the
Well,
all
that's
honest about it is that I should have actually paid him his half. But he didn't get much use of it, to be honest with you. And
did you ever pay half?
by the time it became history, he just walked away and, might have not been too happy with me. But the car ended up in the scrap heap.
Oh, so you weren't
There's a
able to
young
really.
fella that I knew that said he was a mechanic. He had been the son of one of the people who rented from my parents, rented the cottage, but he was older and he was a bit of a bully. So he took the car, and when I asked him what happened to the car, he would just say, "Look, man, it's not working." And he ended up, disposing of it, and I just got along back to my bicycle.
And you never got paid for the scrap?
Never had nothing to do with it. He tried to beat me up, and I just never dealt with him again. Never saw him again, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, he was that sort of. So
Living
then
in the wild Jamaica.
is after that that I bought the motorcycle.
Okay, so it was after the junk
It
car.
was after that escapade, I would call it, with the Vauxhall car.
So the Vauxhall was essentially a jalopy?
It was a jalopy. And, we go to a nightclub and all that sort of thing. And, you could take 5 people in it, and it would have as many as 8. We go night clubbing and, going home at night, and everybody packed up in this car.
Packed car.
Yeah.
We once got, when I was in undergrad, we once got 10 people in a Honda Civic.
Is that right? Oh, yeah. It is. I tell you, those days, I find nostalgic. It was fun time. You had not too many cares, you know, that sort of thing. You could afford, you bought your own clothes. You went home, you gave your mother a little bit contribution towards the house, and the rest was yours to buy clothes and to,
Yeah,
go
before you have real
clubbing.
responsibilities.
Yeah. But the motorcycle was a different thing. I got that motorcycle, was like I explained to always was like that, always tended towards the mechanical, and I would have the motorcycle, and I owned it for a few years. And it was my younger brother at one time, after he left high school, in between high school and theological college, he was appointed in the government, and one of his jobs was to check the rum stores at night to make
Check
sure
for what? Okay.
for excess. They would see how much, because they had to pay tax on the amount of rum that they produced, and he would belong to the excise department. So that was one of his jobs. So he'd use the motorcycle.
So he
To
was the
visit.
tax man. He was the
Yeah,
tax
he was the
collector.
tax. He would use the motorcycle to go and visit the rum stores, and he would do a check to make sure that, take an inventory of how much rum was in each vat or whatever. The part of it that I got, he got an allowance to use the motorcycle, and he would give it to me. You got a mileage allowance, so much per mile, and he would give me that. He was such a nice guy. So when
He
I
was such a nice
decided,
guy because if the roles were reversed, you wouldn't have done it.
he wouldn't have gotten the whole of it. He used to give me all. He would have gotten half.
If the roles were
I'm
reversed.
telling you. Anyway, so that's the vehicle I owned before I left Jamaica. And I sold it to my brother. He actually I needed the extra money for my airfare and all that sort of thing. Because I wasn't a big time saver, and I had to come up with £75 for my airfare to Jamaica, plus a little pocket money. So there we are, Jackie. I'm riding my motorcycle, and actually have a friend who worked in the same office with me. I would pick him up in the mornings, and he would ride on the pillion. And we would get to work, and the motorcycle went all over the place. I remember riding it. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I would ride it to the country. Anyway, eventually, yeah, my brother took the motorcycle, bought it from me. just before I went to England. And so I go to England. I join the Air Force. I do my first training, which we talked about, and I'm now stationed at Valley. And I see this Irishman selling a motorcycle, very similar to the one I used to own. And it was 30 pounds. No, I don't have any money, but I figured that I would have some money coming from my parents' will, you know. And so I wrote to Dar and said, can you advance me some money on that? And she eventually did. And I bought the motorcycle. And I bought that motorcycle. I used to ride it to Liverpool, from North Wales to Liverpool. I got a suit with it. So even if it rained, you know, I was in a suit,
What kind of suit?
a rubber suit, a jacket and trousers so that you didn't get wet.
Black?
Black. And it would have, I got a helmet with it and gloves, big riding gloves.
The
So I
leather
got
one,
the,
the big cuff that comes.
yes, the big, it comes up halfway to your arm. Those motorcycle gloves. And I got that as a part of the kit. This guy
Do you remember how
sold
much
it.
you paid?
Huh?
Do you remember how much you paid?
30 pounds.
30 pounds again?
Again, yes, 30 pounds.
Because the car
30,
had cost 30 pounds, right?
yeah, I remember, I think it was 30 pounds. Maybe I'm
And,
thinking
and
there,
the
but
and the motorcycle in Jamaica cost 30
it
pounds.
was 30 pounds,
So
yes.
everything cost 30 pounds.
That's my recollection, you know, because that was, it was quite a big amount at the time, Jackie. 30
Sure.
pounds.
Yeah, I'm not saying
And
no.
you're making a tenth of
Saying,
that.
I'm just saying it's interesting that everything, that all three vehicles cost the same amount. That's all.
Yeah, well, that's my recollection. I believe
What?
it was. I believe that was a deal at 30 pounds. I don't see my sister wasn't going to send me any more than that. But she
Okay.
sent it and I got the motorcycle and I used to ride that motorcycle. And eventually I sold it. And I guess I didn't have a transportation like that for a while. And then Wally got stationed where I was and he had a Morris Oxford,
Which
a
is what?
green Morris Oxford. I think I have a picture of that car someplace.
The car? Okay.
Yeah. And that's the car I used to drive home to London from North Wales.
You used to borrow his car?
No, I bought it from him.
Oh, you bought it from him.
Yes,
Oh,
he bought a Hillman, and I bought that car from him. And
do you
the
remember
thing
what you
about
paid
it,
for that car?
huh?
Do you remember what you paid for that car? Was that car 30 pounds?
Maybe 30 pounds. It's quite possible it was 30 pounds, you know. I don't, it would be an even number. It could have been 50 pounds. I don't remember. But leave it at 30 pounds, only, just for fun. Anyway, I bought that car, and at the time, I was, we had a motor club on RF Valley, and we would do our own mechanic work. You know, I remember taking the engine down, re-coking and doing all of that, grinding the valves and all of that stuff, because I was very technically oriented, and I didn't see any reason why you're in a motor club and you learn from the other guys. You know, we're in the club, everybody has a car there. You know, you're having a problem with yours, you go say, hey, come, give me a chance, and you come in. So I remember doing that. And in the meantime, Wally, who I spoke about, who's Jamaican and died a few years ago, You heard me talk about Bailey's Beach in Jamaica. It
Yeah.
was very
I
wild.
think I've been to Bailey's Beach. I think I've
You
been there.
we might have gone there when you were a child. Yeah, but Wally went back home from England after he left the Air Force. He worked as a civilian in England for a while, and then he went back home because his father died and he inherited that property. He went back home. So whenever I came all the way through until he died, I used to, whenever I'm in Jamaica, I'd visit him. But that's where I met him. I met him at Valley and bought his car, and he bought another car. You know, the thing about it, Jackie, is that when I was going to Germany, he bought the car back from me.
Okay.
And guess how much?
30 pounds.
Must have been 30 pounds again. I tell you, that must have been 30 pounds again, whatever it was anyway. I leave that in as a fun, as a joke. Anyway, I went to I went to Germany, and he sent me what he was paying for the car. He didn't pay me right away, but I waited for a while, and finally I got the money, and I arranged to buy a car. So there's a young fella that I had known from Valley who was now stationed in Germany, and he was driving this Mercedes Benz.
So you
And
bought the Mercedes off of him?
no, hold on, I said that car needs service, man. It was running not running on all the cylinders. And by that time, I got to know something about cars, you know, and my technical training would. So I said, look, you want to sell that car? And he said, yeah, yeah, I'll sell it. So it was Deutschmarks this time. I think it might have been 2 or 300 Deutschmarks. And I bought the car from him. But I now decided I was going to fix the car. The problem that it had, recalled, I had to take the engine down. So he was without a car, and in the meantime, Johnny got stationed in Germany. And the two of us started to work on cars. And there was a navigator on the squadron I was on who drove a similar car. And I discovered that he had a manual for the car. So I borrowed the manual from him. And myself and Johnny took the engine down. And I went out and I bought new valves and all that sort of thing. And I fixed the car up, Jackie, redid the generator and everything. The car is running good. And it was a Sunday afternoon when myself and Johnny took it for a test run. And I saw this fella, he was an Irish chap. And he said, gave him a ride. I stopped and gave him a ride. That's the fella I bought it from.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going for supper, and I drove him to the mess. And he said to me, this car is driving better than when I bought it. And I said, well, that's good. But I hadn't paid him for the car yet.
Oh, geez,
I had
Dad.
not paid him for the car yet, Jackie.
Oh my
I had
gosh.
not paid him for the car yet.
What?
Anyway, I said, I'm still waiting for Wally to send the money for the car that I sold him. And this guy showed up one morning soon after that and said, "Can I borrow the car?" And I said, "No. I'm late for work. I'm late for work." I said, "I'll take you, but I'm not, I hadn't paid him yet." I said, "I'll take you." He said, "No, I want to, but he had, and I said, "No, no, 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 no." I was on the night shift. I was in pajamas. I said, "I'll change, put on clothes, and I'll take you to work. I'll drive you there." He said, "No, he wants me." And not only that, he's not selling it to me again.
Right. I can see that coming. I mean,
He's not selling it to me
a
again
mile.
because I said, "That's all right, but you're not getting it until you pay me for all the work I did." And Jackie, I padded it. I padded it. I think I ended up charging him 1,000 Deutschmarks. And he paid it. I charged him for every job that I did. I charged him for so much an hour for Johnny, so much and the guy still came. And Jackie, I was just about coming back to England for the weekend, for Christmas or something like that. And he showed up with all of the money. Showed up with all of the money, and I said, "There's the car."
Mhm,
So I went home and I came back and I looked for another car. And I ended
mhm.
up buying another Benz from a warrant officer. But
Okay.
that car also needed work. So I worked on that car. And that's the car I had the accident in.
Okay. Okay.
Johnny
Now,
came and
the second Mercedes Benz, did that what after you fixed it up, did it run as well as the first one?
no,
Mm,
but it ran well enough. But the other car, the car that I was a better car,
mm.
was a better car. But at the time, this car, this warrant officer was selling it. I remember paying 1,000 Deutschmarks for it. And I got a loan from the Deutsche Bank and I paid for it. But I thought when I when I had to spend some money to fix it up. But I wasn't all that happy, but eventually I got it working to my satisfaction. So now, guess who shows up? The first Mercedes-Benz guy shows up. He doesn't know that I have a car.
Okay.
And he's ready. He said, "If you want to buy it now, I'll let you have it." And I said, "No, it's all right. I already got another car."
Hmm.
So that was that.
Hmm.
But he wasn't a technical person. He was what we call a shiny. You know, we call it a shiny.
What does that mean?
You're a clerk. You sit on your butt all day and your pants bottom is shine.
Oh my
And
goodness. Yeah. Oh,
us technical people, we were the top. We got extra pay. We got better money than they get.
okay.
Because we got trade pay for our training.
Right, right,
Especially if you worked in aircraft. You worked in
right.
aircraft, you got extra pay. So anyway, that's about cars. So that's the car. Never owned another car until I came to Canada. Once I had the accident, I the car was junked.
Right.
It was taken to a base someplace, and I expect it ended up in a junkyard someplace.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was without a car. My help, Uncle Johnny and Uncle Sidney were the people who would give me a ride. Uncle Sidney especially would
How
pick
long
me
was
up
that? Maybe 6 months or so you were without a car or longer?
longer,
Okay.
longer, but
A year?
eh,
A year?
maybe a year
Okay.
because the accident was in 1968. 1960. Oh, it might have been less than a year, you know,
No, it makes
because
sense that it's about a year because it was 1968. And then in 1969, when I was 2, we moved to Canada.
yeah, we came to Canada. Yeah. So in
Yeah.
1968,
Uh,
I went back to England in 69, and I got demobbed in 69 and traveled to Canada. Yeah, so I guess I was without a car, but I had a bicycle.
okay.
Yes, if you see,
You
I
had a
have tried
bicycle in Germany?
in
In England?
Germany.
No, Germany.
I bought a bicycle from one of the airmen who was going back to England, and you know, these people sell these things. Sometimes they'd sell a car when they were going back because they didn't want it, and a lot of them would buy a car brand new because they didn't
Wow.
pay tax on the car and take it back with them.
Wow.
But if you owned a car and you want to take one, a lot of them would take a new car back or they would sell the car that they had there.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember I tried to get a Volvo. That was the car, and I was outbid. It
Mm.
was a nice car that a fellow had, and I was outbid mainly because I guess at the time I was not the although I knew this guy pretty well, but he knew another fellow, and he let the other guy have it. And that's why
So
when I decided to buy the Mercedes.
let me ask you, what colors were these cars? The Vauxhall was what color?
The Vauxhall was a silver gray.
Silver gray. And
Yes.
then the next car is the car that you bought in England.
Yeah, I
The
bought
first,
in at Valley in North
and
Wales.
what was that car? What kind of car was that again?
It was a Morris Oxford.
Morris Oxford. What color was that one?
It was green, a light green.
Green, a
Yes,
light green?
a light green. Yes.
A light green Morris Oxford. After the Morris Oxford came the second English car.
No, no, no. That's the only car I owned.
Okay. So then after the Morris Oxford came the first German car, the first Benz.
Yes,
So the
yes.
first Mercedes was what color?
Was gray.
Gray. And the
Yeah,
second Mercedes was what color?
blue.
Blue.
Was a royal blue, I guess you'd say, in between a light blue and a navy blue.
Okay, so a royal blue.
Yeah,
Okay, so silver gray, the Vauxhall, light green Morris Oxford, gray Mercedes, royal blue Mercedes.
royal blue Mercedes.
Okay, so now we're moving across the pond to Toronto
Yes,
because
and
I'm skipping over. You had a bicycle in Germany. What color was the bicycle in Germany?
um, little blue, you know, different blue mostly, a light blue,
Light
as I
blue.
recall. There's a picture of it. One of these days we'll get a chance to look at it.
So then you get to Toronto and you're without a car
I'm without a car. I'm taking the bus
and streetcar.
and the streetcar, dropping on my butt on the snow, running to catch a streetcar. Eventually, we are now living in the Dufferin Street area. And
Near where I am today.
yes, we're Dufferin and Eglinton.
Yeah, it's not far from me.
And I hear that Aunt Maud is coming to visit, coming to Toronto to visit. And I said, if she's here, I gotta find. No, at this time, Uncle Bob and Aunt Joni are living here. Left from England and came here. But they don't he doesn't have a car here. So I have to get a car, and I was in told about a car. As a matter of fact, oh yes, I was living in that place at the time. And I heard through Uncle Dickie of this fellow who repaired cars and sold them. So this is how I end up with the maroon. What do you call it? What color you call it?
Oxblood.
It wasn't oxblood. That's not the color you call it.
What? Burgundy?
Burgundy or whatever. What
But
that was?
maroon's a good, because it was kind of purplish.
Yeah, purple car. You call it purple. It was a Biscayne, a Chevrolet Biscayne.
Biscayne. I couldn't remember the name of it. Yeah, the maroon Biscayne.
Chevrolet Biscayne. I bought it, I remember now, for $1,200. And I thought I got a deal.
More than 30 pounds, man. So now you.
Yes, I'm now into dollars. And it wasn't $30.
Yeah, $1,200
$1,200
today would
I
be
paid for
600
that car. I remember it. It was a car that had had an accident and it was repaired. And I ended up having that car for a while. I had it until I graduated to the white station wagon.
So you got the maroon Biscayne. That would have
Maroon
been
is the right color, maroon, yes.
1970.
We came in 69. We moved up to there. Would have been, I was still working at General Electric. I worked at General Electric for 5 years. So I figure I got it. I only lived at that Witchwood place for 6 months. I think I was here maybe 2 years.
Okay, so 71.
Yes.
71. And you had it until you got the white station wagon.
White station wagon. And I still kept the other car.
So you kept the maroon Biscayne, you bought the white station wagon. What kind of station wagon was the white station
It was
wagon?
a Pontiac.
Pontiac, and it had
Pontiac Laurentian.
I wouldn't have remembered that, Pontiac Laurentian. And it
Yeah.
had the rounded back on the end of the station wagon. You remember it? It was kind of sloped. You don't remember?
Yes, if you could say that. There's a
Remember,
picture in
most
someplace.
wagons were like a square cut, right? They were very angular, whereas this one had like a rounded edge.
Yes, that's right.
It was rounded as opposed to very
There's
angular.
a picture of it someplace.
So when did you get the station wagon?
I got the station wagon. Why did I get the station wagon?
To fit everybody with Horace?
I got it while we were now living at
Pawnee or Clipper?
I'm trying to remember if it was Clipper that I got there.
I remember it at Pawnee.
Yes, I think I got it at Clipper because I think there was a time when I ended up with the Biscayne in the when I was with Darius Automation. The Biscayne actually sold it for scrap. It was parked in in the warehouse of where I was working for Marcel. This is after I left General Electric. It was parked in the back, and I got the station wagon. You know, I think I got the station wagon at Clipper.
Okay.
I got the station wagon at Clipper.
And the move from Clipper to Pawnee happened how old was I? I think I was in grade 2. So I would have been 7.
Well, we were at,
74. So I think we moved to Pawnee in either 73 or 74.
yeah, we were maybe about 5 years at Clipper.
Not that long, because
Not,
we moved to Pawnee. I was at by the latest 74.
yeah, so it's
And we moved
maybe,
for 71.
I remember being there, those are,
So 3 years at Clipper
it
Road.
could have been 3 years we were there. I had Dorothy next door who,
So after the Pontiac Laurentian white station wagon
yes,
came the gray Sierra, yes?
Sierra.
Wasn't it called a Sierra?
It
Buick
wasn't
Sierra.
Sierra, it was Sierra. No. What was that one? It had a slope back, a fast back.
Ciera. I thought it was a Buick Sierra. I'm going to look it
It
up. Ciera.
was an Oldsmobile.
Oldsmobile
Oldsmobile.
Cutlass Sierra.
Cutlass Sierra, yes.
Yeah, it was okay, so it wasn't a Buick, it was an Oldsmobile Sierra.
Oldsmobile, yes. And that car I bought from Marcel.
Oh, 1 second. No, I need to look this up again. I'm looking for that slope back. Oldsmobile. Oldsmobile Sierra.
That's the one Dan used to drive. Dan drove it to university for a while, and then I sold it.
Maybe it's not a Sierra because none of these are coming up with the slope back. That would have been when? 79, 80?
I can't recall actually exactly what year. Yeah, I think that was this year. And then I bought a new one. And I was so pleased. I bought another Oldsmobile Cutlass. So it was a Sierra,
Cutlass Supreme.
Cutlass Supreme.
I remember the Cutlass Supreme.
And then I bought another one.
That was a light green, wasn't the Cutlass Supreme a light green?
A light green, yes.
Whereas the Sierra was a gray, a
It
silver
was
gray.
gray. Yeah, it was gray with a fastback. And that's the one Horace and Diane, and they were all quarreling about who's going to wash it and this and that.
Yeah, here it is. It's a Cutlass Salon, not Sierra.
Okay,
The Sierra exists, but it's a different car.
yeah.
Cutlass Salon hatchback.
Salon, SALON.
Yes,
Cutlass
the
Salon. That
Salon.
was it.
Here it is. All right. I would bring it up on screen if I could, but I'm on my
No,
iPad.
it's all right. I remember what it looks like. Into the hour, I still have to get some
Yeah.
food.
So we can speed up. So after this, so we had the gray, so
From
in
Cutlass
Canada,
Salon.
maroon Biscayne, white Pontiac Laurentian station wagon,
Right.
gray Cutlass Salon,
Yeah.
light green Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme.
Yes.
Then came the Buick, the navy blue Buick,
Yeah, that was
the Brougham.
Oldsmobile.
Oh, was it Oldsmobile,
It
not
wasn't a
Buick?
Brougham. Wasn't a Brougham. It was Oldsmobile Cutlass type of. It was. I forget what it was.
Wasn't a Buick that navy car? It was an Oldsmobile?
Was it? I have a picture of that shaking, what's his name, hand, the guy who bought it from me, who I bought it from. He had moved and it was an Oldsmobile. Oldsmobile. Can't remember what that was.
I'm
And then,
looking. They had Bravada, no. Cutlass,
and then I
no.
bought the Buick.
Cruiser. Okay, I'm going to Wikipedia. Okay. Models. Sedans. Oldsmobile 98?
No, it wasn't a 98. It was a 88. Delta. Oldsmobile Delta 88.
Delta 88.
The 98 was a bit rich for me. It was a Delta 88, Jackie.
It's a Delta 88. Okay, let me look that up because it doesn't list, that's not listed as an Oldsmobile. Delta 88.
Front wheel drive.
Oldsmobile Delta 88. Okay, it's just not listed in Wikipedia.
And I
Okay.
put just Delta 88 and see if you get something with that. It wasn't a Buick.
Oldsmobile Delta 88. But these
You
don't
found
look
it?
like a car. Oldsmobile, the Delta 88. Yeah, but these don't look like your car. So let me find the right year.
Well, I tell you.
Oldsmobile 88. Let me
The
look at
98 and the 88 kind of look, but the 98 was a little more, more bells and whistles.
Yeah, I guess the ninth generation sort of looks like it. Oldsmobile Delta 88. The ninth generation would have been from 86 to 88.
Yeah.
Model years 1986 to 1991. So after 1988, they started calling it the Oldsmobile 88 Royale.
Yeah, well, that was after me
Yeah.
because I moved to a Buick after that.
So what color was the Delta 88?
Navy blue.
That was the navy blue. So then the
Yes,
Buick that came after that was what color? That was also
same
navy blue.
color, the same navy blue. I have
Oh,
pictures
okay.
of
So
it.
that's why I was getting confused because I jumped a car. I went straight to the Buick.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what was confusing
And
me. Okay.
what was the Buick again? Buick what?
I don't know.
Buick, not Regal.
Yes, was it the Buick? Was it a Buick Regal?
I don't remember.
I'm gonna see. Um, and you would have bought that in the 1990s?
The Buick?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had it for quite a while. And then after the Buick
Buick LeSabre.
Buick what?
LeSabre.
That's it. That's it.
Buick LeSabre.
That's it, Jackie. Buick LeSabre.
Yes, indeed. Well, I own a Buick today, and I got to tell you, I was driving my Buick earlier this week, and I'm like, this is a nice car.
Oh yeah.
Like,
No, I would drive one. Buick
I
was
Love my Buick Verano.
One of the better GM. Buick LeSabre, Jackie.
Buick LeSabre. And then after the LeSabre came the SUV, yeah?
Yes, came
The Santa Fe, Hyundai Santa Fe.
and Hyundai Santa
Hyundai
Fe.
Santa Fe. All right. Well, we made it through the list, Dad.
Yes, right up to date now. And we remember that one was the Oldsmobile Salon.
The Oldsmobile Salon with the cut back.
Yeah,
Very unique looking car.
yes. And you know how I got that car? That
No.
car was a car that was leased by Marcel, and he had it parked in the back of my office in Darius Automation, and he would use it. He would use it when he was in Toronto.
Okay.
When he wasn't in Toronto, it would be parked in the back.
And you offered to buy it off of him?
No, I didn't offer. He offered it to me at the end of if I would pay the buyback. And
Oh,
we was getting a buyback, and if just pay the buyback and it's yours.
that's a
So
good
I
deal.
got it. I got it at a good deal, and by
Yeah.
that time, he wanted me to do some sales. When I wasn't busy, That's how I started in sales.
Okay, okay.
So when
So
I
you
wasn't
helped have
busy,
for
I
that.
would I would go out and they pay me a car allowance and a mileage allowance. So I got that pretty much on the cheap because the car allowance took care of whatever the loan installments were, and eventually bought it. And like I say, doing well enough now in sales. I got the Cutlass Supreme, and Dan used to drive the Cutlass alone to U of T in Scarborough. And then
Mm.
they were quarreling. Horace used to have it around, and it was there. And next thing I know, man, I had them arguing and quarreling. By the time I got Cutlass Supreme, they arguing over washing it. I called Neville and asked him if he knew anybody looking for a car, and I sold it for $1,000.
Mm. And broke their hearts, right?
Well, I'm sure they haven't forgotten that because it was but they have a car at their disposal. I'm paying the insurance. And they're fighting over who's going to wash it. And I called him, and the guy came and picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "No, there."
That's it. Now
Yeah.
you don't have to fight over washing it. I solved your problem for you.
I had the station wagon while I had that car, and Horace used to drive it. And
Mm.
remember, Diane had an accident. Diane used to drive it to church.
Yes, I was in the car.
Yes, she had an accident with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know one morning I went out. I was driving the Cutlass alone, but that other car was still there. It was sitting on the driveway, and I decided I had forgot something, and I came back home. And of course, Horace, instead of
Gone in the car.
riding, oh yes, I saw him driving it back from wherever he had to go. I caught him driving the car back
Ah.
from where he had to go. But I didn't bother him too much. But you guys got away with a lot. I was a good father.
Well, I never
Oh,
drove the station wagon. I never drove the Cutlass Supreme. I never drove the Delta 88. I never drove the LeSabre. I never drove any of your cars. The first car of yours I ever drove, I think, was the Hyundai Tucson. Not Tucson, Santa Fe. The Hyundai
You
Santa
kind of
Fe.
fair. Okay.
I don't think I
So
ever.
you didn't get a license in a hurry. Diane got a license,
I was
and Horace had
27.
a license. I don't remember Angela. I don't remember when Angela got a license.
I
When she
think
was, I don't remember her
I
driving any of
was
those cars
late
either.
or early 20s when she
But
got
always Diane and Horace that were
Orange.
driving the cars.
No,
And
I was
Diane,
27 when I got my license. I did drive mom's car occasionally.
okay, the Tempo,
Tempo. At one point, I
Ford,
was using it to go
Ford,
to work,
Mercury Tempo, Mercury.
the Mercury Tempo. At one point, I was using it to drive to Brampton to work at one point until I got my car, my.
Oh, okay, okay. So we were well middle classish there, man. Two cars,
Yes, yes, indeed.
two
Yes,
cars. Your
indeed.
mom driving her car, I driving my car.
Exactly. So, all right then, Dad. The car stories.
Car story. So we
Cars.
got the names back. So yeah, I'm going to go grab something to eat and be ready for dawn.
Okay, good. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
ending the
Jackie.
session. All right. Let me
I
stop.
really am. This is keeping me